The ice moon Europa hung silently in space, its cracked surface reflecting the distant sun's weak light. Beneath one of those cracks, the small human outpost named Frontier hummed with activity. Only 30 people lived there, far from Earth, and alone in the vastness of space. Martin Gray rubbed his tired eyes as he checked the gauges on the life support system. At 42, his brown hair was already showing streaks of gray. 5 years in space would do that to a man. The mining engineer had come to Europa to escape memories, a failed marriage, an empty house, and the crushing silence that followed him on Earth. System check complete, he muttered to himself, making a note on his tablet. The outpost had been built just 3 years ago, humanity's furthest home in the solar system. The walls around him were plain white metal, the floors bare except for necessary equipment. There was no room for beauty this far from home. Martin's radio crackled. "Gray, can you check airlock 7? We're getting strange readings." The voice belonged to Zach, the night shift technician. "On my way," Martin answered, gathering his tools. He enjoyed these quiet moments of problem-solving. Machines made sense. They broke. You fixed them. They worked again. Not like people, with their messy emotions and complicated needs. The corridors were quiet as Martin made his way to the airlock. Most of the crew was asleep or working in the research labs. He nodded to Rita, the security officer on patrol, but didn't stop to chat. After 2 years at the outpost, everyone knew Martin kept to himself. The airlock door came into view, its red warning light blinking steadily. Martin frowned. That wasn't normal. He quickened his pace, wondering if the external sensors were malfunctioning again. The freezing temperatures on Europa's surface played havoc with their equipment. As he approached, Martin noticed something else unusual. The proximity alarm was sounding, a soft, steady beep that indicated something was outside the airlock. Probably ice debris from their mining operation, he thought. It happened sometimes when the winds shifted. Martin reached the small viewing window and peered out, expecting to see nothing but Europa's endless ice plains. His heart nearly stopped. Outside the airlock, floating in the vacuum without any protection, was a child. At least it looked like a child. Small, with a body shape vaguely like a human's but clearly alien. Its skin glowed with a soft blue light that pulsed gently. Where a human would have hands, this creature had what looked like webbed fingers pressed against the glass. Martin blinked hard, certain he was hallucinating. But when he opened his eyes, the creature was still there. Its huge eyes, 3 of them blinking back at him. "Control," Martin said into his radio, surprised at how calm his voice sounded. "This is Gray at airlock 7. We have contact with something not human. Repeat, we have first contact. This is not a drill." For a moment, silence filled the radio channel. Then chaos erupted. "Stay put, Gray," came the sharp voice of Patricia Winters, the station director. "Do not open that airlock. We're on our way." Within minutes, the empty corridor behind Martin filled with people. Patricia arrived first, her normally perfect blonde hair messy from sleep. Behind her came Dr. Alan Porter, the outpost's exobiologist, his eyes wide with excitement as he lugged his equipment. "Is it still there?" Patricia asked, slightly out of breath. Martin nodded and stepped aside so they could see through the viewport. A collective gasp went up from the gathered crew. "Impossible," whispered Rita, who had followed the commotion. "It's surviving in vacuum? At -200 degrees?" Dr. Porter pushed forward, his hands shaking as he set up a camera. "This changes everything we know about life," he said, his voice trembling with excitement. "Everything." The creature outside noticed the growing crowd and moved closer to the window. Now they could see it better, about the size of a 10-year-old child with a slender body and that strange pulsing blue skin. Instead of hair, tendril-like appendages floated around its head, moving as if in water despite the vacuum. "What do we do?" asked someone from the back of the group. Patricia squared her shoulders. "We follow first contact protocols. Dr. Porter, establish communication if possible." Porter nodded eagerly and began setting up the external communication system. As he worked, Martin kept his eyes on the alien. There was something in its three-eyed gaze, an urgency, a desperation that seemed strangely human despite its alien appearance. "External speakers active," Porter announced. He leaned toward the microphone. "We are humans. We mean no harm." The alien child tilted its head, the tendrils around its face waving faster. Then it reached into what seemed to be a pouch on its body and pulled out a small device. When the alien pressed it against the glass, holographic symbols appeared, floating in the space between them. "It's trying to talk to us," Patricia whispered. For the next hour, they worked to establish basic communication. The alien symbols gradually became clearer as Porter's linguistics program began to find patterns. The breakthrough came when the alien drew a simple picture, a larger version of itself, trapped under the ice. "I think it's saying someone is trapped," Martin said, speaking the thought that had been growing in his mind. Porter nodded excitedly. "Yes, the symbols indicate distress, and this larger figure must be significant to the smaller one." "A parent?" Patricia suggested. "Maybe. Its mother." The alien responded to the word mother with increased movement, pressing more symbols against the glass. New images appeared, a ship or structure of some kind, buried under the ice, with warning symbols around it. "Air running out," Porter translated uncertainly. "At least that's what these repeated symbols seem to indicate. Decreasing resources. Danger." Martin studied the location indicators the alien was providing. His blood ran cold as he realized where the trapped vessel was. "That's directly below mining point C," he said. "We're scheduled to drill there tomorrow." "We would have drilled right into them," Patricia said, her face pale. Dr. Porter could barely contain himself. "This is history in the making. Intelligent, alien life, here in our own solar system." As the scientists and leaders debated what to do, Martin kept watching the alien child. Behind its strange features, he recognized something universal: fear for a loved one. He had seen that same look in the mirror years ago when his own mother was sick. "We need to help," Martin said suddenly, cutting through the excited chatter. Patricia turned to him with surprise. "We need to contact Earth, follow protocols, get authorization." "There's no time," Martin interrupted, pointing to the alien's diagrams showing air supply levels. "If these readings are right, whoever's down there has less than a day of air left. We can't just rush into this," Patricia argued. "This is first contact. The scientific and diplomatic implications are enormous." Martin looked at the alien child again, meeting its three-eyed gaze. "Look at it, Patricia. It came to us for help. That's all that matters right now." The room fell silent as everyone looked. Between Martin and the alien, the creature's blue glow had dimmed slightly as if it was losing hope. Patricia sighed, then nodded slowly. "I'll take responsibility for this. Gray, Porter, work with our visitor to figure out exactly what we're dealing with and how to help. Rita, prepare the rescue equipment. We have a life to save." As the crew dispersed to their tasks, Martin stayed by the window. The alien child pressed its webbed hand against the glass, and without thinking, Martin placed his own hand opposite it. Despite the cold barrier between them, despite the vast differences in biology and origin, something passed between them in that moment. A simple understanding that transcended species. Someone needed help, and Martin would give it. The bright lights of the conference room hurt Martin's eyes. No one had slept since the alien's arrival 6 hours ago. Coffee cups littered the table, and the air smelled stale. Around the table sat the outpost's key personnel, their faces a mix of excitement and worry. "We're calling it Blue," Dr. Porter announced, pointing to a screen showing the alien child. Because of the skin color, the alien watched them from a specially prepared room next door. Its body glowed with that strange blue light, brighter now that they had brought it inside. After some tests, they discovered it could breathe their air with no problems. "Blue understands we want to help," Porter continued, pushing his glasses up his nose. "We've established basic communication using these symbols." He showed them a chart covered with strange marks and their English translations. Patricia Winters, her blonde hair now neatly tied back, stood at the head of the table. Earth sent their first response, she said, holding up a tablet. They want us to wait. A special team is being put together. Wait how long? Martin asked, leaning forward. 3 weeks minimum. Silence fell over the room. Martin looked through the window at Blue, who sat watching them with those 3 large eyes. Blue's mother doesn't have 3 weeks, Martin said, finally. According to what we've learned, she has maybe 30 hours of air left. Diane Lewis, the outpost's best drilling engineer besides Martin, spread out a map on the table. She was a small woman with dark skin and quick hands. The alien ship is here, she said, pointing to a spot 300 meters below them, stuck in a pocket in the ice. Can we reach it? Patricia asked. Frank Cooper, head of safety and built like a football player, shook his head. Our drills weren't made for this kind of job. If we're off by even a little bit, we could cut right into their ship. We might kill whoever's inside. Or, he added grimly, they might have weapons or engines that could damage our outpost. Martin studied the map. Blue showed us where their airlock is, he said, pointing to a spot on the diagram. If we can drill down and make a tunnel to it, maybe they can get out that way. Patricia rubbed her temples. What about the rover's heating elements? Could we melt a path to them? Too slow, Martin said. We don't have enough time. The debate continued for hours. Voices grew louder, tempers flared. Meanwhile, Blue watched through the window, the glow of its skin dimming as time passed. Martin noticed this and wondered if the fading light meant Blue was losing hope. Finally, they agreed on a plan. They would use their most precise drill to make a narrow shaft down to about 20 meters from the alien ship. Then they would use a special heating probe to melt the last 20 meters of ice carefully, to avoid damaging the ship. It's risky, Diane admitted, but it's our best chance to reach them in time. While the others prepared the equipment, Martin went to sit with Blue. The alien room was kept slightly warmer than the rest of the outpost, after they noticed Blue seemed to prefer heat. Through the translation system, a tablet that showed symbols Blue could understand, Martin tried to explain their plan. Blue watched intently, those 3 eyes never blinking all at once. How many others are with your mother? Martin asked, curious about these strange visitors. Blue's answer appeared on the screen. Only mother. Others gone to stars. Martin nodded, slowly understanding. You're explorers, he said. Like us. He felt a strange connection to this alien child. Both of them were far from home, in a place humans had only recently dared to visit, and now they were working together to save a life. Outside the room, the outpost buzzed with activity. The drilling team was preparing the equipment. Scientists were studying the data from Blue, trying to learn more about the alien ship. Security officers were setting up emergency protocols in case something went wrong. Rita stepped into the room, her security uniform crisp despite the crisis. The drill is ready, she told Martin. Patricia wants you there. Martin nodded and stood. He pointed to the tablet showing Blue that he would be back soon. In the drilling control room, Patricia was reading a new message from Earth. Her face looked troubled. Problems? Martin asked. She handed him the tablet. The message was clear. Proceed with extreme caution. Prioritize human safety. Gather scientific data. Await specialized team. They're more worried about studying them than saving them, Martin said, his voice tight with anger. Patricia looked around at her team, Diane at the drill controls, Frank checking safety systems, Porter analyzing Blue's latest communication. How much time do we have? She asked Porter. The scientist checked his data. If Blue's information is right, less than 30 hours before the air runs out. Patricia took a deep breath. Earth's instructions would take weeks to follow properly. She straightened her shoulders. We're proceeding with the rescue. This is my decision, my responsibility. A cheer went up from the team. Martin felt a weight lift from his chest. They were doing the right thing. The drill was positioned at the exact spot Blue had indicated. It was massive, a tower of metal, with a diamond-tipped drill bit that could cut through Europa's ice like it was butter. But today they would use it with more care than ever before. Starting first sequence, Diane announced. her fingers dancing over the controls. The drill hummed to life, vibrating the floor beneath their feet. Martin returned to Blue with the news. "We're going to help your mother," he said, using the tablet to translate. He drew a simple picture of the drill and the path down to the ship. "But we need to know more about your ship so we don't damage it." Blue's eyes did something strange. They all blinked one after another in a circle. Dr. Porter had said this might be a sign of gratitude. Then Blue began sending information to their systems, detailed diagrams of the ship, showing its shape, its size, and most importantly, where its outer skin was weakest and strongest. For the next 10 hours, the drill bore down through Europa's ice. The outpost shook with the effort, and twice they had to stop to let the equipment cool down. They weren't designed for this kind of continuous use. Blue stayed near the control room, watching the screen showing their progress. Sometimes the alien child would touch the screen, making small adjustments to their path based on some knowledge or sense the humans didn't understand. Just when they were halfway to the target, alarms blared through the outpost. "Ice shift," Diane shouted, her hands moving rapidly over the controls. "The drilling is causing cracks." On the radar screen, they could see fissures spreading through the ice around the drill shaft. If they continued, they might cause a collapse, burying the alien ship even deeper or worse, crushing it. "Stop the drill," Patricia ordered. The machine ground to a halt, and silence fell over the control room. Martin looked at Blue, whose skin had dimmed to an almost gray color. The alien child stared at the screen showing the cracks in the ice, 3 eyes wide with what had to be fear. "We'll find another way," Martin promised, touching Blue's shoulder gently. The alien's skin felt smooth and cool, like touching water that wasn't quite liquid. Blue looked up at him, then back at the screen. Slowly, the alien's skin began to glow brighter. Blue stepped forward and pointed to a new spot on the map, slightly to the east of their current position. "What is it trying to tell us?" Patricia asked. Dr. Porter studied the translations appearing on his screen. I think Blue is saying there's another way to reach the ship. A natural crack in the ice that leads closer to where the mother is trapped." Hope returned to the room. Martin squeezed Blue's shoulder gently. "Show us," he said. "Show us how to save your mother." The new plan came together quickly. Blue had shown them a natural crack in Europa's ice that ran close to the alien ship. It was narrower than the drill shaft would have been, but it meant less drilling and less risk of causing more ice shifts. "We'll need to go down ourselves," Martin told the team as they gathered around the map. "The crack gets too narrow for the drill at about 200 meters. From there, we'll have to use the handheld thermal melters to widen our path." Patricia nodded, her face serious. "Who's going?" "I am," Martin said without hesitation. He looked at Blue, who stood nearby, skin glowing bright blue again now that there was hope. "I promised." "I'll go too," Diane offered. "I'm the best with the thermal equipment." "And you'll need security," Sam Kelly added. Sam was the outpost's head of security, a tall man with dark hair and steady hands. "Just in case." By morning, though on Europa, morning was just a word. On a clock, not a change in the dim light. The team was ready. Martin, Diane, and Sam stood by the entrance to the ice shaft, now widened and reinforced with metal supports. They wore modified mining suits with extra oxygen tanks and heating units. "Final equipment check," Martin said, his voice echoing in his helmet. They each confirmed their systems were working. Behind them, Blue watched with those 3 unblinking eyes. The alien child had tried to explain that it could survive the journey without a suit. Apparently, Blue's species could handle both vacuum and extreme cold, but the humans weren't taking chances. Dr. Porter had created a small environment suit for Blue, adapted from their smallest emergency gear. The alien looked strange in it, like a child, wearing an oversized snowsuit, but at least now Blue could communicate with them through the helmet's radio system. "Remember," Patricia said over the comm, "primary goal is rescue, but be careful. We still don't know much about Blue's people or their technology." "Understood," Martin replied, securing his helmet. "But I don't think we have anything to fear. They came to us for help. The descent began. A winch system lowered them slowly down the shaft, the walls of ice glowing blue from the lights they had placed during the initial drilling. It was beautiful in a strange way, like being lowered into a giant sapphire. Blue moved differently than the humans, not needing the winch. The alien child seemed to swim through the air, controlling descent with small movements of those webbed hands. "How are you doing that?" Diane asked over the radio, watching in amazement. Blue's answer came through the translation system, the mechanical voice sounding odd in their helmets. "We swim between stars. Ice is easy." At 150 meters down, they saw something strange in the ice walls. "Hold position," Diane called, focusing her light on a section of ice. Inside were what looked like frozen strings or vines branching out in complex patterns. "What is that?" Sam asked, his hand moving to his utility belt where his shock stunner was holstered. Diane scanned the structures with her equipment. "They're carbon-based, complex organic compounds." She looked at Blue. "Life? Native life on Europa?" Blue made a gesture they'd come to understand as agreement. The translator spoke. "Old life. Sleeps in ice. Has always been here." Martin felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold around them. Scientists had theorized that Europa might harbor simple life in its subsurface ocean, but here was proof, and it was far more complex than anyone had imagined. "We can study it later," he said. "We need to keep moving." At 200 meters, they reached the end of the drilled shaft. Here, the natural crack Blue had identified continued downward, a jagged split in the ice barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. "This is where it gets tricky," Martin said, detaching from the winch. "From here, we use the hand tools." They pulled out the thermal melters, devices that looked like small flashlights but emitted focused heat beams that could melt the ice cleanly. With Blue guiding them, they began to widen the crack, creating a path large enough to move through, comfortably. The work was slow and tedious. Sometimes they had to stop and let the ice cool to avoid causing more cracks. Sweat built up inside their suits despite the external cold. Sam kept watch while Martin and Diane worked, always alert for any danger. "Tell us about your ship," Martin asked Blue during one rest period, partly out of curiosity and partly to distract himself from the claustrophobic feeling of being surrounded by ice. Blue's translator voice explained, "Not ship like yours, living. Vessel. Grows and changes. Protects us between stars." "Living?" Diane repeated, fascinated. "You mean it's alive?" "Yes. Born from seas of homeworld. Bonded to us. Helps us travel." Martin tried to imagine it. A living ship, something that was born rather than built. It was so different from human technology that he could barely wrap his mind around it. After 3 more hours of careful work, they reached 280 meters depth. According to their sensors, the alien vessel was just 20 meters below them now. "I'm getting strange readings," Diane said, checking her equipment. "The ice structure is different here. More porous." Before they could investigate further, a low rumble vibrated through the ice around them. Small fragments rained down from above. "Another ice shift," Sam warned, looking up the narrow passage they had created. "We need to hurry or we might get trapped down here too." They worked faster now, the thermal melters carving away at the ice between them and the alien vessel. Blue moved ahead of them, those webbed hands touching the ice walls as if communicating with them somehow. Finally, their sensors showed they were directly above the vessel. Just a few meters of ice separated them from it. Martin aimed his thermal, melter downward, ready to make the final cut. "Wait," Blue's translator voice said. The alien child moved Martin's hand aside gently, then pressed those webbed fingers against the ice floor. To the human's amazement, the ice began to melt on its own, as if responding to Blue's touch. A hole formed, widening until it was large, enough for them to pass through. Below, they could see something glowing with the same blue light as Blue's skin. "The ship is calling to Blue," Diane whispered, awed by what she was seeing. Blue looked at Martin, those 3 eyes blinking in sequence. Again, the gesture of gratitude. Then, without warning, the alien child dove through the hole, moving with incredible speed. "Blue, wait!" Sam shouted, but the alien was already gone. "We have to follow," Martin said, preparing to lower himself through the opening. Sam grabbed his arm. "This could be a trap. We don't know what's down there." Martin pulled free. "I made a promise." Without waiting for a response, he lowered himself through the hole and dropped the short distance to what lay below. He landed on something that wasn't ice. It was smooth and slightly warm, and it glowed with patterns of blue light. The surface felt almost like skin, yielding slightly under his boots. Martin looked up in time to see Diane and Sam following him down. They stood together, staring at their surroundings in wonder. They were standing on what appeared to be the outer hull of the alien vessel, but it wasn't metal or any material they recognized. It rippled slightly, as if breathing. Blue was a few meters away, hands pressed against a section of the hull in a specific pattern. As the humans watched, the surface began to spiral open, revealing an entrance, an airlock of some kind. The alien child looked back at them, then gestured urgently toward the opening. The message was clear. "Come inside." "Martin, wait," Diane began, but Martin had already made his decision. "I'm going in," he said, and moved toward the opening. This was why he had come to Europa, he realized. Not to escape his past, but to be part of something bigger than himself. To reach across the stars and connect with something new. Inside the airlock, Martin found himself in a space unlike anything humans had built. The walls pulsed with light, and what looked like living circuits ran in complex patterns across every surface. It felt warm and somehow alive, as if he had stepped inside a giant heart. Blue led him through a second doorway that opened on its own as they approached. Beyond was a larger space, the main chamber of the vessel. The air here was different, thicker, and warmer, with a sweet smell that reminded Martin of the ocean. And there, at what seemed to be the center of the chamber, lay another alien. It was clearly an adult of Blue's species, larger and with more elaborate tendrils around its head. But its skin glowed much more dimly than Blue's, pulsing weakly like a fading light. Blue rushed to the larger alien, making sounds that needed no translation. The child's distress was obvious. Martin approached carefully, his instruments showing that he could breathe the air here, though it was different from Earth's. He removed his helmet slowly, taking experimental breaths. His eyes never left the adult alien, whose 3 eyes were closed. "I'm here to help," he said softly, knowing the words meant nothing without translation. Instead, he held up his medical kit, then gestured to the alien. The meaning was universal. "I want to help you." Blue looked up at him, the glow brightening slightly. The alien child nodded in that strange circular motion they used, and Martin knelt down to begin the most unusual medical assistance of his life. The inside of the alien ship felt like being inside a living thing. The walls moved slightly like they were breathing. Light pulsed through what looked like veins running across every surface. Nothing was hard or metal like human ships. Everything felt soft and alive. "Diane, Sam, it's safe to come in," Martin called through his radio. "The air is breathable." His friends soon joined him, their eyes wide as they took in the strange beauty of the alien vessel. Diane immediately began scanning everything with her equipment while Sam kept his hand near his stunner, still not fully trusting the situation. "This is incredible," Diane whispered. "The ship, it's not just alive, it's responding to us. Look." She pointed to the walls where the light patterns had shifted to follow their movements. But Martin's attention was fixed on Blue and the larger alien lying motionless on what seemed to be a raised platform in the center of the room. Up close, he could see that the adult alien, Blue's mother, was clearly in trouble. Her skin's glow was very faint, and the tendrils around her head barely moved. "What happened to her?" Martin asked, kneeling down beside the platform. Blue's translator voice explained. "Breathing system damaged when ice shifted. Cannot process. Your air. Cannot return to home air." The alien child touched the mother's face gently. "Life fading." Martin opened his medical kit and scanned the alien with his diagnostic tools. The readings made little sense. The alien biology was too different from anything human medicine understood, but one thing was clear. She wasn't getting enough oxygen or whatever her species needed to breathe. "Diane, call the outpost," Martin said urgently. "Tell Dr. Porter we need help. Maybe there's a way to adapt our breathing equipment for her." While Diane made the call, Martin examined the alien more closely. Around her throat area was what looked like a damaged device, perhaps some kind of breathing apparatus. "This is broken," he said, pointing to it. "Is this what helps her breathe?" Blue nodded, the movement more human-like now after spending time with them. "Converts molecules, makes air safe." Martin's engineering mind raced. He didn't understand alien technology, but he understood systems, flow, and adaptation. Maybe we can fix it or make something similar. For the next hour, Martin worked with Blue to understand the breathing device while Diane relayed information back to Dr. Porter at the outpost. Sam set up emergency lighting and kept watch, still suspicious of the living ship around them. "Ship is sending out signals," Sam reported suddenly, looking at his scanner. "Lots of them." Blue nodded. "Calling others, telling them we found help." The implications hit Martin like a wave. "There are more of you? Here in our solar system?" "Many vessels. Watching. Learning. First time meeting humans." Martin's hands paused over his work. They weren't just saving one alien. They were making first contact with an entire civilization that had been secretly studying humanity. The thought was both exciting and a little scary. "Porter has an idea," Diane announced, breaking his thoughts. "He thinks we can modify one of our oxygen converters to match the alien device's function, but we need to bring some equipment down from the outpost." "There's no time," Martin said, checking his readings. The mother alien's life signs were getting weaker. "We need to bring her up to the outpost." Blue made a distressed sound. "Mother cannot survive in your air without protection." "Then we'll make a sealed transport," Martin decided, "like a mobile version of the room we prepared for you." He turned to Sam. "Go back up. Get them to prepare the medical pod. The one we use for quarantine. We'll carry her up in that." Sam nodded and headed for the airlock. Martin and Diane continued working on temporary measures to stabilize Blue's mother while they waited. "Why did you come here?" Martin asked Blue as they worked. "To Europa, I mean." Blue's translator explained, "Study water worlds, find life." "Your drilling sounds, we heard them. Came to look. Then accident happened. Ice shifted. Mother trapped." Diane looked up from her scanner. "You were studying us while we thought we were alone out here." She smiled behind her helmet. "Looks like both our species are explorers." 3 hours later, everything was ready. Sam had returned with the medical pod, a clear container designed to isolate potentially dangerous samples or sick crew members. They had modified it with environmental controls based on Blue's instructions. Moving the mother alien was the hardest part. She was larger than Blue, and completely unconscious now. Her skin had faded to an almost gray color. Together they carefully placed her in the pod and sealed it. "Now we need to get her up through that narrow ice crack," Martin said, looking at the small opening above them. Blue touched the side of the pod, and to the human's amazement, the ship's floor began to shift and rise like a living elevator, carrying them up toward the opening. The ice above widened on its own, melting back to create a larger passage. "The ship is helping us," Diane whispered in awe. The journey back to the outpost was slow but steady. When they finally emerged from the ice shaft into the outpost's lower level, a team of scientists and medical personnel were waiting. Dr. Porter rushed forward, his face a mix of scientific excitement and genuine concern. "Bring her to the xenobiology lab," he instructed. "We've set up an environment chamber based on Blue's specifications." For the next 12 hours, the outpost's medical and science teams worked non-stop to save the alien mother. They repaired her breathing apparatus using parts from their own equipment, following Blue's guidance about how it should function. Martin stayed through it all, refusing to leave until they knew if she would survive. Finally, around what the outpost clock called midnight, they saw the first signs of improvement. The alien's skin began to glow again, faintly at first, then stronger. The tendrils around her head started to move slightly. Blue, who had not left the mother's side, made a sound that didn't need translation. Pure joy. "She's stabilizing, Doctor," Porter announced, checking the readings. "I think she's going to make it." Over the next few days, the mother alien, whom they called Lyra because of star-like patterns on her skin, slowly regained consciousness. Unlike Blue, she couldn't adapt to the human atmosphere and needed to stay in the special chamber they had built. Communication improved rapidly once Lyra was awake. Her knowledge of humans was much greater than Blue's, and she helped them refine their translation system. "My child told me what you did." Lyra's translated words appeared on their screens. "You risked yourselves for unknown beings. Anyone would have done the same," Martin said, though he knew that wasn't necessarily true. "Not all would," Lyra responded. "This choice shows what kind of beings you are." As Lyra recovered, she shared information about her people. They came from a water world 30 light-years from Earth, with cities built in the deep oceans under ice, much like Europa's. They had developed technology that allowed them to travel through space in living vessels, ships that were grown, not built, and that could move through dimensions humans couldn't even see. "We have watched many worlds," Lyra explained, "but yours is the first where we have revealed ourselves." "Why did you choose us?" Patricia asked during one of the information exchanges. "We did not choose," Lyra answered. "Necessity chose. But now we see it was the right path." 2 weeks after the rescue, Lyra had recovered enough to return to her ship. The Earth authorities had finally arranged for special diplomatic teams to travel to Europa, but they were still weeks away. Patricia made a bold decision. "We're establishing direct communication with your people," she told Lyra, without waiting for Earth's permission. On their last day at the outpost, Lyra presented Martin with a small device that glowed with the same blue light as their skin. "This will call us wherever we swim," the translation explained. "Our peoples need not be strangers again." As Blue and Lyra prepared to leave, their ship now freed from the ice and fully repaired, Martin walked them to the airlock. Blue approached him and held out a webbed hand, a human gesture the alien child had learned. Martin knelt down and took the small, blue hand in his. "Safe travels," he said. Blue's response translated simply, "We will return. This moon holds friends now." The aliens entered their ship, which rose slowly from Europa's surface. Then, in a flash of blue light that defied human understanding of physics, it seemed to fold into itself before disappearing completely. Back in the control room, Diane called out in surprise, "I'm picking up signals, dozens of them, no, hundreds." On the screens around them, sensors showed previously undetectable vessels throughout the solar system, all sending the same message. "Greetings. They were here all along," Patricia whispered. "Watching, waiting to see who we are." Martin looked down at the small blue device Lyra had given him. It pulsed gently in his hand, matching the rhythm of his heartbeat. "And now they know," he said, a smile spreading across his face. "We're the kind of people who help." In that moment, on a small outpost on a distant moon, humanity had truly become part of something larger than themselves, a community of worlds, bridged by a simple act of compassion. A human had helped save an alien child's mother, and in doing so, had opened the door to the stars.